Niner19 copy. Can you guys hear me out there? This is Theresa Mercado, host of Scream Screen. Welcome back. Did you enjoy your Joyride? Over. Excellent. Welcome back. Thank you guys for coming out tonight and joining in the Scream Screen Presents On the Road Again double feature. And very, very excited to have Mr. Clay Tarver joining us tonight, the co-writer of Joyride. He is joining us all the way from LA, California.
Yes.
Clay, thank you so much. We're so excited that you could take time out tonight to talk about Joyride with us.
You need to work the term in breaker.
Breaker.
There you go. Thank you.
Over and out. Over.
Yes. Good.
So, Clay, we're very excited to have you. In addition to co-writing Joyride with J.J. Abrams, you have written many feature scripts, magazine articles, and as you call it, other stacks of paper over the years.
Yes.
And you were very recently a writer and executive producer of HBO's Silicon Valley, which we're all big fans of.
Thank you.
You're originally from Texas, trucking country.
Yes.
Whoa, breaker. And
there you go. Nicely done.
Oh, nicely done.
With the breakers.
I'll sprinkle them throughout. Breaker. You are from Texas. You've been a musician for many years, guitar player in the band Chavez, as well as Bullet La Volta. You've done so many things, and you are directing your first feature coming up pretty soon called Vacation Friends.
Yes.
I don't know how often people are ringing down your doorbell to talk about Joyride, but we are eager to talk about that with you tonight.
Yeah, I finally showed it to my older sons, like weirdly 3 weeks ago, right before you contacted me.
Perfect.
And they had never seen it. And there were so many multiple endings that we shot that I had literally forgotten what happened. There were like 7 different ones. So I got to watch, there were like 3 distinct endings. And so I actually got to watch it not knowing what was going to happen. So it was really nice. It was really fun, and it held up, and my kids liked it. And, I emailed a couple of the people I did it with. And, after this is the first movie I ever got hired to write. And I sort of knew what I was doing, but I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was a really fun experience. And it was funny to look at it now that I know a little bit more. And I really liked lots of it. And so I emailed JJ, and I was like, so I just showed my kids the movie, and I was like, yeah, and there's stuff in the middle. And he was like, come on, there's great shit in this thing. Like the words on the signs, that was awesome. So it was really fun to reconnect. And I texted Steve Zahn, who I'm still pretty good friends with from that. And he was just so fantastic in it. They all were, but he was particularly fun to watch. And so it held up. It was one of those things. It's rare when you can look back on something you did a long time ago and enjoy it. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and for those that watched it tonight via streaming services, but on the DVD, yes, I think there is 3 alternate endings. Did you guys write all of those endings? Is the one that ended up being on the theatrical release the ending you would have selected? Can you talk more about why there's so many endings to Joyride?
There was an original script, and it was very, very different. And that was probably my favorite one. And usually I never say that, but it was kind of my favorite one. And then we had a reading for it for all the bigwigs who were making the movie. And the last act was kind of all action. And so it's a weird thing when you do a table read and action takes over, because it's some guy reading the narration, like running down the street, all the, here comes the truck, he ducks, whoosh, over, it becomes very dull. And I think that had an impact on it. And the idea was to just keep it on the road. And so that was my favorite one, which no one has seen. Then we did I don't even remember what the first one was. The first time we shot it, the whole first chunk of the movie was singing so well that we we wanted to think of a different ending, which led us to those hotel rooms at the end. And so maybe I think maybe we saw too much of the trucker Rusty Nail. But then and so JJ just boldly pitched like an entirely new third act and said, let's reshoot it. And they were like, okay. So, and this was a very unusual time because they kept wanting to make it better. And at a certain point, I would start to get a little tired of all the rethinking. But then I was like, when is this going to happen? You know, you get to keep working on it until it's good. And so then we reshot the entire third act, and it went so well that they felt like they needed one last twist at the end. And so then we shot a last twist at the end. So all in all, I don't know. It sort of, I kind of feel like it ended up what it was supposed to be. So, but we spent so much time in multiple cornfields. It was sort of like a Jaws ending where they blow up the truck, which was really cool. But it was in a cornfield instead of an ocean. But it was a really, really fun experience, and it kept going. And John Dahl did a great job, and I consider him a good friend of mine after it. I considered everyone who worked on it. They were all really, really nice people. Lily Sobieski was really great. The late Paul Walker was really great. And I have to say, I felt like he and Steve had a genuine chemistry. Watching it again, I really felt like he was quite good in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the casting is great. You know, Steve Zahn is such a great character actor and just that great comic relief, and he does a great job throughout it. Um, Going back to, because this was still pretty, I mean, this was your first feature that you'd ever written.
Mhm.
How did you come up with what was the inception for the story? How did you team up with J.J. Abrams? Had you
Okay.
guys been writing partners prior to this film?
So I co-directed with a friend of mine from college named Jesse Peretz, my roommate in college, who's an actor named Donald Lowe. I worked at MTV, and we did these interstitial pieces called Jimmy the Cab Driver for MTV.
Yay. We love them.
So Donald, I met the first day of college in 1984, and we've been friends ever since. I talked to him yesterday, and he was the funniest person I've ever been around. One of them. I've been around a lot of funny people, but I will say, formatively hilarious. And he had this act. I moved to New York, and I got a job at MTV, and he had been acting in so many different parts, and he would use his charms and his wit and his humor to get the parts, but the parts were about this big. So Jen and I, we were all sort of lost in our careers, and we were like, why don't we do one of those things like the Dennis Leary pieces, which were the only reference at that point. And so I think Jesse had a cab driver. Jesse directed videos and at the time, and he had a cab driver. This is going somewhere. But anyway, he had a cab driver and in Boston, and he was like, so what do you do? And Jesse was like, I do videos. And the guy was like, you mean for the MTV? And he was like, oh, it'd be really funny if Donald played it and we could talk about videos from that perspective. So we did it, and it was a huge hit because this was back when MTV mattered. And Donald was already an actor, and Jesse was already the director, and I didn't know what to do with it. And MTV wanted to turn it into a movie, so I said, "Shit, I guess I'll write it." I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where the margins in the paper were. And so then Donald was in this horrible, not horrible. I don't mean to be judgmental. In a less than successful version of Diabolique starring Sharon Stone,
Seen
and
it.
he was like, "Dude, the guy who's playing the comic relief in the movie with me is this awesome screenwriter, and he loves the cab driver. He can totally help you out." So I flew out to Pittsburgh, and I met him, and it was J.J. Abrams.
Huh.
And J.J. was, pardon the pun, sort of lost at the moment. He was always super hot shit and super impressive. And so he had just been doing it since he was 20 or something. Like he wrote regarding Henry when he was just, a youngster.
Yeah.
So he lived in New York at the time, and he showed me, he was like, I'll help you write it. So I wrote that movie. It didn't get made, but at the end of it, he was like, would you ever want to do a scary movie? And I was like, I never thought of doing that. And the only idea he had was, two guys with a CB giving shit to a trucker and feeling all cocky. And then the trucker says, you better get that fixed. What? Your tail light. And suddenly everything reverses. And so I got the job. I said, okay, I'd like to do it. And I had seen The Hitcher, and we both loved The Hitcher. And I guess a lot of people thought we were obsessive about Duel at the time, but really it was The Hitcher, which was the jam, and which is a great, great movie, I think.
Absolutely.
And so I got the job. I sort of didn't know what I was doing, and JJ kind of had to bail me out to help me out. And then he really got into it. And so we started to write it together, and it was actually going to be like his directorial debut. And then over one weekend, he wrote a pilot that was called Felicity. And so that took off. And so he was like, I got to go do this other thing. And then John Dahl came on as the director. And so that's sort of how we ended up doing it. And I had sort of a dangerous level of experience because I'd done those cab driver things, and I'd recorded records. I was in 2 bands, as you mentioned. And so I'd done creative things, and I'd worked at MTV. So I sort of knew what I was doing, but I sort of didn't know. And I really took it as like, I'm so lucky to get a movie made. I want to just be there for as much of it as I can. And John Dahl, was a great noir director and a really nice guy, allowed me to be on set for the whole thing, which I don't know if I would do that if I were him. And so we went and did it, and it was just this, it was a really fun experience, and it was sort of like a traveling roadshow because we kind of went all the way across I-80 of Nevada, and we went to all these cool towns like Battle Mountain and Elko and Winnemucca. And we would just go from town to town, and then all ended up back in LA to shoot all the stuff on the stage. So it was just a really, really fun. And those movies it's hard to make a movie like that these days for whatever reason. So it was really fun, really, really fun. And it came out shortly after 9/11, and I'm not sure anyone was in the mood to get scared. And so that was unfortunate, but for the movie, it was unfortunate for the world. So I don't want to discount that, but it was something that I think we all felt pretty proud of.
As you should be. It's a great movie, and as we were kind of saying, it does hold up. I want to talk a little bit about Donald Lowe, because I know there's some fans in the chat of Jimmy the Cab Driver. I'm a fan myself. I grew up on MTV and loved those as a young person, and just followed his career. I mean, he's done so much also. And you had mentioned he was your roommate in college, and I know he had done some tour managing for some of your bands, and you guys had a long relationship.
Great actor, terrible road manager.
Yeah, he seems like a good buddy. I don't know if I'd, want him in like a position of controlling my decisions and funds.
He got his first big role, which was for the mini series called Common Ground in Boston, and we had to let him go do it. We were bummed. He was a blast to have on the road, and he took off. He took all of our contracts. So we were playing all these shows, and we didn't know what the guarantees were because he had them. So that was the end of his road managing career, but he did okay.
And I was just reading that he actually has a Class A CDL license and owns a trucking company.
Yes.
Was he so inspired by Joyride that he wanted to become Rusty Nail, or what?
No, I think he wanted to. He's into trucking. It's a little bit of a mystery to me. And I feel like I'll just let him speak for himself when it comes to the trucking aspirations. I think it was to diversify business interests, which I'm supportive of.
Yeah. I was very surprised when I read that he was a trucker. I was like, really? Well, he does a little bit of everything. That's
He
great.
actually said he's a trucker.
Well, I didn't personally have a
owns
conversation with
company.
him. I read
I'm
on
sure
the
he has his trucking license.
Yes, he has a trucking license and that he was a co-owner of a trucking company.
This is all factual.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you got your CDL and you own a trucking company, that's a definition of a trucker.
Yes.
Look at me. I know a thing or two about being a trucker. I'm just saying.
You're dressed for the part.
Exactly. So yeah, Jimmy the Cab Driver, we did put a few on during the intermission, so fans got their Jimmy fix, and those that were too young or don't remember, hopefully got some of know what we're talking about now. I did want to talk a little bit. We had mentioned that this ended up becoming a franchise. There is a second and third movie. Really, the only thing that ties them all together is the character of Rusty Nail. But you were not involved in the second and third movie, correct?
No, I heard about the second one right when there was a writer's strike, and I had 3 kids and had just moved to LA. I was in a panic, and when I heard about it, I was like, "Awesome! When's my check coming in?" And when I started the movie, I only had one family friend in the 70s who had a CB, and it was a father and a daughter who were very close friends of my family, and his handle was Rusty Nail.
Awesome.
But he was not a killer, as far as I know. And his daughter's name was Shiny Tack. So it was so I just picked that, and it felt sort of, graphic, inappropriate. And so when I heard about the second movie, I was like, awesome. I need the money. This is great. I got the magic mailbox, and my lawyer was like, no, you only get you came up with the character thing. And I think it was literally like $20 or something. That's the straight to video is like, so they don't have to pay people. It's for movies that don't do so well, so that then they can kind of make their money back. And we did okay. We didn't do great. We got good reviews, but it wasn't like a box office runaway. I can accept it.
Well, I will just be honest with you. Joyride 1 is far superior to Joyride 2 and 3, and they're between us, they're a tad unwatchable.
Yes, I tried to watch Joyride 3. And doesn't it open like with a topless woman smoking crack?
That's it.
And then within 2 minutes, she's being ripped apart by a truck.
Yeah, the first 15.
Which when I say it, sounds fantastic in terms of like vivid and shocking, and somehow it just but whatever. It's part of the franchise. I should.
You described the first 15 seconds perfectly. So if you want to tune in, folks, you've got your morning
at your own peril.
It gets right in there. It's interesting to learn that you were on set. That's cool, especially for a first-time writer. Big John Dahl fan. Something about the movie that's always struck me when I first watched it when it came out was I immediately recognized the voice of Rusty Nail as Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, actor Ted Levine. But for whatever reason, he's not credited on the movie, which I always thought was bizarre. And that same year, the first Fast and the Furious movie came out starring Paul Walker. So I don't know if you have any insider intel on why he's not credited. I mean, everyone loves him. And was he maybe not the first choice to be the voice actor of Rusty Nail? Was there some connection with Paul Walker being with him on Fast and Furious? And he said to the casting department, like, hey, I know Buffalo Bill. I can call him.
No, it was like we took so long to make our movie that because with all these reshoots that we shot Joyride first, then Paul did Fast and Furious, and actually came out before ours did.
Gotcha.
And I remember people sort of throwing a little shade on his acting. And I was like, dude, that's his A game. That was good. And he was already sort of on his way. But when we had cast him, he hadn't done, this was by far his biggest part. And then we did all of the I was actually the voice of Rusty Nail for the actors to play off.
Ah.
Coincidentally, I'm the guy in the back seat, pretty much Jesse too sometimes, for the cab driver stuff. So I was used to it. I'd shot a lot in cars, and and so I would be the guy with a microphone talking to, you know, Paul and Steve over a speaker. So that was it. And then so we just knew we were gonna put in the most interesting voice later. And I never met Ted Levine, and is that his name?
Yeah, Ted Levine.
Yeah, I was always a huge fan. So I kind of have no insight into it. I think it's probably a weird gig to be the voice of something and not appear.
Sure.
And so who knows? I don't know.
But I mean, really, he playing Buffalo Bill on Silence of the Lambs, it's that voice that everyone remembers, and it puts the lotion in the basket, or I mean, everyone knows that without even knowing that.
Oh my God, yeah. And I was really psyched he was the one who did it.
Yeah, me too. And that, again, when I first watched it, I was like, Buffalo Bill, but yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to see, do we have any questions from the audience out there? I'd like to open that up, Clay, if you're still down with taking some questions from folks that are watching.
I am.
All righty.
All right. Breaker. This is Candy Cane.
Rusting out a Candy Cane.
Candy Cane here. See, got some questions from our audience. All right. We have a question from John Manchaca, and he asks, there you go. In addition to being a musician, was writing and working in film something you always wanted to pursue? And also, do you have any interest in scoring films?
Great question.
Okay. I never wanted to be a writer. When I left college, I was like, I'm never writing a paper again. And then I was a musician, which was great because it was so much fun. And writing music is really hard, but I was like, you got to play the stuff. That was the reward. You got to play the songs that you wrote in front of people, even in rehearsal. It was really fun. And so when I decided and volunteered and took the opportunity to write the cab driver script and be in it, that led to something else. I started to get worried that I was going to become a writer. And I really loved directing the cab driver stuff. And I loved being on set for for Joyride because I like making things. And by the way, it was the first job anyone ever paid me to write, and it got made. And I was like, oh shit, this is easy. And of course, then it was years and years before I ever got another movie made. And so I did it to get the most out of what I had in front of me. And a lot of the writers that I now know, they all are dying to be writers, and they worked really hard to break into it. So I'm one of the few that is a very reluctant writer. It's just very, very hard. Like I said, when you write a song, you get rewarded with being able to play it, record it, play it live, rehearse it. It's really fun and satisfying. When you write a feature screenplay, sometimes your reward is that you get to stop. And that's kind of it. But I've made peace with it. I feel I like writing now. I'm at least less tortured by it. And what was the last part of the question?
Do you have any interest in scoring movies?
No. No, I have interest in my band Chavez. We've played a bunch recent, like in the last 7 or 8 years. We played some, and I love doing that. And I'm so very, very close friends with all of them. And I would love to do more of that. Matador is re-releasing our first record, the 25th anniversary of this record called Gone Glimmering, in the fall. And I still sort of identify as a musician, but scoring, I have a bunch of friends that score, and it's like the hardest job of all time. So I'll stick to my rock band thing. That's my lane for musician. And in fact, Chavez is my lane for my musicianship. So that's
Joyride has such a great score. I just want to touch on that really quick too. There's some very Hitchcockian moments in Joyride. One of those being when Lewis and Fuller are in the motel room and they're eavesdropping through the wall and they hear Rusty Nail kind of giving that guy a hard time. Very reminiscent of Psycho with the Bates Motel, overhearing things, not quite sure what you're hearing. And the score also is very Bernard Herrmann, who was the primary composer for Hitchcock films. It has such a great score, the film, interspersed with, some late 90s music. But I just wanted to give just a mention to how good the score of Joyride is.
Yeah, I will say that scene was my favorite scene in the whole thing. And I thought the setup all the way until, they see Rusty Nail again or hear him again, I thought was really, really, it really held up. And it was always the part of the movie that we all felt like was working great. And the idea of listening through the wall to something and not knowing what it is.
Exactly.
JJ's talked a lot about that. And that was, we always felt like the movie was a bit of an early parable of the internet, meaning there were all these chat rooms and you could say all of this stuff with this fake cover of anonymity. And so we wanted to kind of play with that. That was a new thing in the world. And we wanted it to be about responsibility. And I'm not sure if we got that too much, but it was also just like when you're scared, sometimes that's the funniest time. Like when you're a kid and you're egging cars and like the car stops and chases after you, like you really do fucking freak out. And afterwards you're like, you should have seen your face. And then there's a lot of humor in those moments. And that was what we really wanted to try and do with this. And so the score, that scene in particular where they're listening to the wall, like after we shot that, I turned to John and I was like, that what you just did was genius.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah. It was really, really cool to see him put that whole scene together.
Candy Cane, do we have any more questions from the audience?
We do. We have a question from Mark Borchardt, writer-director of Coven and star of American Movie, asks you, going back to your there you go. He's wondering what your writing day is like when you're writing a screenplay.
Well, first of all, huge fan. I love that movie. I love his movie, and I love that movie. Everyone should go see it. I feel like everyone has. It's fantastic, and he's a very inspirational figure. It was great to watch him, and I felt a sort of very special spirit that anyone who's tried to make something connects to. So my day, it depends. If I'm on a TV show, it's like for Silicon Valley, it involved a lot of traffic because where we wrote was very far away. And it's a totally different experience doing TV than features. Features, it's a lot of me getting up early. I used to have an office when I first started, when I lived in New York, and I would go to the office. I needed somewhere to go, but I would do a lot of writing in one cafe, get coffee, go to another cafe, get breakfast, go to another cafe, just to mix it up and sort of end my afternoon in my office. And I found after lunch, I really, really slow down. And lately, I've been writing at my house, which I used to hate, and now I love. I love not getting in a car and going somewhere. And I kind of roll out of bed and do a little bit of a routine and then start writing. And I have a guy I work with sort of as a writer's bounce guy that I can call, who I can talk things through. I need to talk things through all the time. But I'm pretty efficient. If I know what I need, if I know what I'm writing, I can be pretty quick. But writing a feature is one of the hardest things you can do. TV is totally different. It's a complete group effort, and it goes through one brain at the end, and it was also super fun and a really different experience. But feature writing is like running a marathon. It's really hard. So that's my answer.
All right. We
Great
do have a
question.
question.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. We do have a question from viewer Eolian. The question is, what scene do you think John Dahl improved upon the script the most?
Probably that scene where he's listening through the door. I mean, through where they're listening through the wall. I remember when they blocked it, there just happened to be a painting, and he just let the actors sort of go where they would naturally go. And they each went to one side of the painting, and he shot it in this very sort of symmetrical way, covering each of them with slow camera moves as they got freaked out. And then he sort of, as the thing that you can't quite hear and it's unclear in that sort of rear window kind of way, he pushed into this painting. And I think we had an idea that you would almost cover it through the wall, like you were following the action as they walked across, but all you would see is the wall. And on the fly, he just was like, why don't we just do it this way? And it was truly amazing to see. And I thought he did a fantastic job with it. So I ruined that question by already answering it, but I restated it.
It's a great scene. It's okay to talk about it twice.
Good. My favorite part of that scene is the detail. This is why Steve Zahn's a fucking genius, is when he goes to the door, looks out, it's like, is everything okay? I can't remember the line. It's like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. And then he quietly locks the door behind him. Like, Steve is great. So he was amazing to work with. He always made everything better like that. And he pushed Paul. I think Paul had never done that much acting before, and Steve just pushed him into it, and it felt like a real rapport between them, especially in that scene. So
yeah, absolutely. They make brothers look very natural, for sure.
Yeah.
Do we have time for another question, Candy Cane?
Yeah, I think so. We're going to do one little short one probably, and then one a longer one. James Johnson's wondering, Clay, what would your CB handle be?
I had a heavy metal nickname for my bands that everyone called me Tarver, which doesn't quite work. Like my fictional heavy metal band would be called Tarver. So that
Tarver. Can you hear me? Over.
Yes, Tarver. You got Tarver.
Tarver.
See, kind of works.
Over.
Should be something more vivid, but anyway, that's the best I could come up with at this second.
On the spot.
And the next?
Let's see. And actually, I got two more. First, Justin Bailey really wants you to tell us why James Lowe is God's gift to the world.
Well, I'm still in awe that I know James Lowe, because he was in this band called Live Skull. Everybody knew in our milieu knew that he was the drummer with the rototoms. That everyone, I was starstruck the first time I met him, and I still am. And he's the best drummer in the world, and he is an incredible dude, incredibly smart, and I can't say enough positive things about him. He can get grumpy. That happens. I get grumpy, but my role in the band was to always be to help make James, really get, Matt Sweeney and I were always just kind of, why is he playing with us, because we're such doofuses. And James is an incredible. It's so much fun to play with a great drummer. You feel like there's a real musician behind you, and it's just an incredible experience. So he was that. What was the other question?
Well, our final question
Okay.
that we have here, this also comes from Eolian, who asked one earlier, is do you think that the Jason Everman storyline will ever become another film, a spin-off film from Joyride?
Great question.
I'm writing it right now. That's what I get out of that's what I do right here at this very spot. So I'm getting close. It's at Amazon. And so I've been working on it. And it's a very, very tricky story to tell. But I really love it. I hope to do it after the movie I'm doing now.
And can you just tell the audience, for those who don't know, his association with Nirvana, Soundgarden, just a little bit about who he is and what he ended up doing?
My first band, Bullet Volta, it's weird. We never get mentioned, which is weird, because we were completely part of that class of grunge-ish kind of alternative bands that all came out at the same time. And we were definitely in the mix of all of that stuff. And so we played with Nirvana, we toured with Soundgarden. And I met him then, and he was super nice to us. And so Jason Everman was a guy who had the unique distinction of being in Nirvana, and it didn't work out. And then, he was bummed out because it didn't work out. And then 2 weeks later, Soundgarden asked him to join, and that was his favorite band. He liked Nirvana a lot, but he loved Soundgarden. So I met him when he was in Soundgarden. Then that didn't work out, and he was sort of, dealt a crappy hand twice. And, in a pretty amazing twist, he said, "I don't want to be that guy." Yeah, by the way, then Nirvana became the biggest band in the world, and then Soundgarden became like the fourth biggest band in the world. So he was sort of like Pete Best twice. But he said, "I don't want to be that guy." And he put all his shit in storage without telling anybody and joined the army and became this highly decorated special forces guy who fought in Afghanistan and Iraq and got his degree in philosophy at Columbia. And so it's a real amazing story of like taking your own fate into your hands and saying like, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be something else. And so it's a really fascinating story, and he's a fascinating guy. And I wrote an article about it in the New York Times just because I knew him, and I felt like his story had never been told, and it's just a fascinating thing. So that's the project I'm writing. I'm adapting my own article into a movie, which I don't recommend because it's very hard.
That's great. That's very exciting. I have read that article. Obviously, there's some other people that have out there. So I'm glad that will be coming into reality. Very excited for that. And also very excited for our vacation friends, which we'll all be hoping for at some point in the future.
Yeah. That's the movie I'm directing right now. And we shot the first 2 weeks in Puerto Rico, and we were heading to Atlanta to shoot 7 more weeks and finish the movie. And we got the call that the world was stopping.
Yeah.
The next day I was on a flight to LA. And so we're just waiting to get back into it. And I think we'll be going pretty soon, like in a month or so.
Right. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Yes. So.
Well, Clay, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you tonight. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for Scream Screen, talk about Joyride, tell some great stories. And thank you so much. We really, really had a great time chatting with you. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for the great questions. Be sure to stick around for the second film in the double feature tonight, Peter Weir's The Cars That Ate Paris.
Ooh.
Enjoy. Over and out.